they intend to make these new procedures permanent. Let us say very clearly to the Port Authority and the FAA, this is not acceptable, and we are not going to allow this.
Calling it plain uproar, State Senator Tony Avella, who represents the 11th Senate District in Queens, held a rally in front of his district office in Bayside this past Saturday, December 15th, to protest the Federal Aviation Administration's intention to move forward with the implementation of changes in departure procedures at LaGuardia Airport that has resulted in an excessive increase in noise and air pollution throughout northeastern Queens. Joined by Assemblymember Edward Bronstein, Congresswoman-elect Grace Megg, civic leaders, and dozens of area homeowners, Senator Avella made it very clear that the communities in Northeast Queens will not accept this decision without a fight. The FAA, that was testing a new departure procedure from LaGuardia Airport earlier this year that lasted for 6 months, had officially stated at the time that before they reach a decision to pursue the use of this new pattern on a permanent basis, they would first consider comments from the public. This FAA statement was also sent to AKTINA TV following our inquiry on the matter. Senator Avella and Assemblymember Bronstein also held a meeting with the FAA on September 6, during which they were told that the 6-month test period of new flight procedures was just completed and that they needed approximately a month to examine their data and issue their findings. The FAA officials also promised Avella and Bronstein to hold a follow-up meeting with them to discuss those findings. Although both the senator and the assemblyman continued to reach out to the FAA to schedule the follow-up meeting, the agency never responded, and instead they announced 10 days ago that they have done some type of an environmental review in which they issued a categorical exclusion, which means they are not required to do a more detailed and formal environmental review of their procedures. Avella said that he learned that since the FAA issued this exclusion, they intend to make these procedures permanent. This is simply unacceptable, he stressed. Furthermore, the FAA did not hold any public hearings to consider comments from the affected residents. The rally was also addressed by Assemblymember Bronstein, Congresswoman-elect Megg, and several civic leaders, all of whom expressed their outrage for the FAA's decision to implement these changes in departure procedures at LaGuardia and for completely disregarding their concerns and brushing aside their ongoing efforts to openly discuss the matter to find better solutions. Here we are again, a few months after the first demonstration. I can hear the planes go by again. It seems that the FAA decided that they're going to keep this pattern.
And they did it with zero community input. You know, they never gave us an opportunity to attend a hearing. They never let us give our ideas or explain to us exactly what is going on and why they made the decision. And that's why we're back. And I think they think because it's the federal government that they could just do whatever they want and everybody's just going to roll over, and we're here to let them know that we're going to fight this tooth and nail as long as we can.
And while you're pursuing this fight, are you confident that you might be able to convince them to change this pattern?
I wouldn't say confident, but we have to try. And I've been reaching out to our federal officials, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and what we're asking them to do is at least have the FAA come talk to us, or maybe ask them to suspend this until we have an opportunity to be heard, or let's explore other options to make sure that this new change doesn't just impact one community, which is here in Bayside and Whitestone. Let's see if we can maybe spread out the flights so everybody shares the noise.
All right, tell us a little bit about Queens Quiet Skies, because right now Queens is not enjoying quiet skies anymore.
Queens Quiet Skies was formed in response to the FAA's stealth plan, which we discovered one morning when we woke up at 6 a.m. and we had airplanes flying about 400 feet over our houses 3 times a minute every 20 seconds from 6 a.m. until midnight. This was news to us, and so many of us called our elected representatives, and they were as in the dark as we were. And so we have been working since this started. Then they told us that it was a test. Okay, now we had a test, and then they told us there was a public comment period, which seems to have come and gone without anybody telling us where we're supposed to comment, to whom we're supposed to comment, when the period started, when the period ended, because lo and behold, despite the fact that they promised to come and speak to the community 3 times, the FAA has now suddenly said that this is now going to be implemented permanently. And I don't want to leave out the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. They are equally responsible. The Port Authority runs LaGuardia Airport. It's like a 3-card Monte game. You go to the FAA and they say, oh, goodness, we don't run the airport. Go talk to the Port Authority. And then you go to the Port Authority and they say, oh my goodness, we have no responsibility for these plans. You have to go talk to the FAA, which has treated us, I would say, with the back of their hand.
But you're not giving up, Janet, right?
No, we are not giving up. In fact, we're just standing around here figuring out, our next line of action, which we're talking about. I'm asking one of the local law schools, to let us assign a law student in the environmental law clinic to work with us on the legal approaches and research to this. We found out recently that just like the Texans, if we can get enough signatures on an online petition, the president will have to answer us. So that's the second one. And I think it's really time for our federal officials to make some kind of meaningful, substantive response to our complaints, which has been sorely lacking. So I'm waiting. Senator Schumer voted for this plan. Senator Gillibrand did not. When we wrote to them, the letters we got back said, oh my goodness, just like the FAA and the Port Authority, we'll just forward your letter on to, I don't know who, which bureaucrat. I'm still waiting since August to have an answer from my senators who, someday the Supreme Court may tell us that corporations can vote. But so far they can't. And I can vote, but Boeing can't. And that's really the answer, is I pay for this. I'm paying for this. And I'm paying for Boeing and JetBlue and Delta to be represented at the FAA and to get their work done by the FAA with my tax dollars, and I am totally out of the loop.
Well, Janet, thank you very much. Keep up the good fight. And we will continue reporting on this, both on AKTINA TV and AKTINA FM.
I very much appreciate that.
As you mentioned earlier during your brief comments, you've been fighting very hard to convince the FAA to meet with you guys and the community to resolve this issue, but at no avail. So what's the next step?
The next step is just to continue to spread the word. I've become very, very good as a civic leader with the mass emails, so I just continue to send out the mass emails. And fortunately, I'm getting a lot of supportive responses to my mass emails, and hopefully one thing will lead to another. This will mushroom geometrically to more and more and more people, and all of a sudden the FAA will start to see the light and stop this and reroute the planes to some place where it's less annoying to the rest of the bulk of the community and the bulk of the borough, and this will all stop.
No more than, in fact, there's a rep here.
Port Authority of New York, New Jersey must do a Part 150 study to abate the noise in our homes, and no progress will be made until they do this study. And we need to push them collectively from North Queens, South Queens, JFK to LaGuardia. We need to push the FAA to do this study because, again, most metropolitan areas in New York, in the United States, have had a study, but in New York region, we have not seen any study or a proposal of a study from the FAA. So we therefore support Senator Avella and Senator Bronstein in their efforts to push legislation to get this mandatory study done.
How are you?
I'm doing well, Senator. Here we are again 6 months later, same topic. The FAA has not even given you the opportunity to discuss this issue and has not given the opportunity to the residents who are affected by this air pollution and noise to come to a compromise. So you're still fighting.
Well, at this point, we're just beginning to really get organized. And since the FAA failed in its promise to have a follow-up meeting to us after they reviewed their data, we're just going to fight them. Northeast Queens is not going to give up. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of residents whose quality of life will absolutely be destroyed. Having planes very low over their homes every 2 minutes, not acceptable. Not acceptable.
Somebody suggested that maybe you should also reach out to the churches in the areas to further inform the people and get more crowds and maybe a bigger rally.
Well, as I say, we're just beginning to get organized, and there was a lull in the airplane noise because while they were doing this test, they stopped for a while. I don't think people are beginning to realize that what they're hearing now is just the beginning of how bad it's going to get. I actually had a situation where one of my staff members, her daughter, who lives in Whitestone, thought one of the planes was crashing because it flew over so low. And you can imagine where people move to the Northeast Queens for the residential, quiet sort of quality of life. To have that destroyed now because LaGuardia wants to increase capacity purely for economic reasons, that's not acceptable.
You believe this is going to be a very long fight?
I think it's going to be a drawn-out fight, but it's going to have to be won on political grounds, because the FAA has federal law behind them, which basically allows them to do what they want. But we're going to show them we're a community that sticks together. We're a community that fights. And you may be the FAA, but welcome to Queens, and we know how to fight.
And now you have Congresswoman elect with you. You're reaching out to your senators. How are they responding?
Well, so far we've been talking to them. They've been looking into the issue. The rally here today and how many people showed up and the civics that are here, I think sends a very strong message to them that this has become, for all of Northeast Queens, which again, hundreds of thousands of people, the #1 issue in this area. And people are going to remember how everybody stood on this issue for years to come.